Hey everybody, my name is Kevin Killoran. I'm with One Shepherd, and we're trying something new this time. This is going to be a um, an interview of sorts with another One Shepherd cadre. The intent of this being to kind of just make the personalities known, make the skill sets known, let people know what One Shepherd's really about, and establish some of the humanity about it. This one is going to be pretty basic, pretty short form, but the intent is kind of see what works and what doesn't. Long term, we're going to see what the community wants, see what cadre wants to hear about, what the students want to hear about, and it's going to evolve over time. That's the intent, at least. So,
Yeah.
my name's Kevin. I'm facilitating. Matt, I'd love you to introduce yourself, where
Yeah.
you're from, what you do, and how long you've been with One Shepherd for.
Matt Getters. Yeah, this is. I like this idea. This organically came up, and we'll see what comes out of it. I think this is an interesting format because we don't want to make this necessarily a cult of personality where it's like, well, we got to figure out important person over there. I think we can mix this up around even the Warrior students that are in our institution. So yeah, this is a great new format. We'll try something new. We're always learning. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a really good point. Is like this is it's a leadership school. It's really initiative based. So at one point, this is just a half organic conversation between Matt and myself. We're like, hey, this would be cool. I've seen videos like this in the past, and let's try it out. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and we learn from it and move on. So a little bit more about you, Matt. Where do
Yeah.
you live? What do you do? What do you like doing?
Okay. Yeah. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Man, I could go deep here. I was about to Bel Air on you and do the, you know what Bel Air is? Yeah,
Of
well,
course.
it was raised in Philadelphia on the west side. Favorite subject was basketball
Up to
after
no
school.
good.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that shows my age probably now. But yeah, I am 41. Maybe that's relevant. Maybe that's not. But yeah, grew up in St. Louis my whole life. Both parents worked at Boeing. Personally have got the aviation bug, so started with that at like 7.5. Started flying RC model airplanes. Now fast forward a bunch, got an engineering degree. Started working in aerospace. Been working in aerospace for 2 decades. Really, I started as an intern before I even got married. Married with 4 kids now. My wife Tanya, who actually has also been through the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. She is a graduate. She tabbed out. She's actually triple tabbed. Serves on staff for a while, but you asked about me. I can't help. I like my wife, so I can't help talking about her.
I've met her. She's a lovely person. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. She does a lot of the cooking. If you've been around in some prior years, yeah,
it's a league of its own. The chow there. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's different food situation there, right? So yeah, absolutely. So and yeah, I guess maybe it's relevant, maybe it's not, but I didn't have any parents that were served in the military. That question often gets brought up because we do have a diverse background of people that come through One Shepherd. Historically, we get about half the folks that either come from or go on to a military or law enforcement career or background. The other half are everybody else, so history teachers, math teachers, engineers, accountants, housewives, you name it. So yeah, didn't really have that, but I guess to give you a hint of maybe a tinge of where that interest came from, I know my grandpa on my mom's side, he served in World War II and really didn't talk about it. And he lived kind of far away, so I didn't really have, a whole bunch of sit down stories with him. It was, pretty infrequent interactions with him. But something about he was describing some of the weapons he carried, and I was like, well, that interests me. So mechanical mind.
I like what that is, yeah.
Right. I started looking up, how do these weapons work? And so I kind of became interested in firearms and guns and things like that nature of how they work. And so didn't come from a family that really owned guns at all. So had an uncle took me out when I was like 15 to shoot his Glock, and I forgot what else it was, maybe like an M1 carbine or something. So that was pretty cool. Didn't get my own until later and really develop that hobby until later. So that's maybe how it relates to the One Shepherd side. But yeah, still always maintain a interest in aviation. I've got a flight simulator that I built myself that's just off camera over there. It's a F-18C Legacy, so I have mixed reality, so I throw on the headset, and then all the cockpit is laid out as it should. So when I reach out for a button in VR and I can have the hand tracking, I have my virtual hand match up with the physical real button as close as I can be. It's about a 1/4 inch accuracy depending on which button you care about. But yeah, it's a hobby of mine there. So yeah, aviation's always
That's
stuck with me. So yeah.
that's super cool. So from my perspective, you kind of fit the niche of the classical engineer. You're very technical minded.
Yeah.
You have a deep seated knowledge and almost like an intrinsic like desire to get to the nitty gritty of something. So it's like, what is this? How does it work? How can I make it work? I would love
Yeah.
to know a little bit about your in a generic sense or your career. So like, what skills does your career require? Like at a high level, what kind of engineering is it for anyone who may be watching this and
Oh, okay.
going through high school? Like just a little bit about your career skills and how that fit. And since you're doing it, I guess before you joined One Shepherd,
Yeah.
what the like how those skills can kind of transfer over to One Shepherd or vice versa. So let's start with the
Okay.
career, then go to One Shepherd.
Yeah. So exhausted like the physics and math available to me in high school. I remember taking like physics tech when that was still a cool thing. It was kind of like a shop oriented physics type activity there. Went to community college for a couple years and then transferred in locally to the joint University of Missouri St. Louis / Washington University joint engineering program, which means people who know what this is that sounds really cheap, and that's a really expensive private school because they didn't have any upper level, junior, and senior level engineering. So what I did is went to community college, transferred that into UMSL, but because I was done with all those courses, I went straight to WashU in the evening and worked as an intern at a place. Once I got into WashU my junior year, I had a buddy that I went to community college with. And he's like, "Hey, I work at this place. We need an intern. Come intern for us." And that was with a company called, well, maybe I shouldn't say. Maybe it doesn't matter.
It doesn't. We don't
Yeah,
need to be too specific.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
Um,
But I started working there, and they were working on their first assemblies. They had traditionally done just fabrication of individual parts. We call them details in aerospace because we have to be fancy. But they'd work on individual details, and this was their first time actually doing any assembly. And we were working on Black Hawk helicopter parts, and this was about 2006. I graduated in December of '08 and got married in '07 for timeline reference. But started working on those there. Always I grew up around fiddling with stuff. So obviously the RC airplanes. My dad and I restored a '73 Corvette when I was like
ooh,
14. I actually took my driver's test in that, and it freaked the state trooper out. Yeah, that was funny because we got to it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you get to take this car," and the sheriff's like, "Ah ha ha ha, yeah right." And then I put my key in it, and his eyes lit up. He was like,
it's like,
"Really?"
oh no.
I was like, "Oh no." He's like, "No, this is awesome. Let's go." So anyway, but yeah, so been mechanically minded. So been frustrated under the hood of a car many times by dumb engineering decisions of like, why did you make me turn the wheel all the way to the left so I could take the oil filter out? Dumb stuff like that. So how to put stuff together was, I enjoyed that side of it. So I got a degree in mechanical engineering, but functionally work as a manufacturing engineer and have basically done that role. I've been a project engineer, other flavors of that, but basically focused around the manufacturing of aerospace parts. So highly analytical. Had a mentor once say that an engineering degree is nothing more than a certificate that says you have the ability to solve hard problems. So
Yeah.
I tell people that to this day because I think it's true. There's this misnomer that you're just doing long differential calculus all day. Not true at all. Just can you solve problems? Looking back in hindsight, it really is more about communication. Tell young engineers this, like, you can be the smartest guy in the room, but if you can't communicate effectively that idea to the rest of the group or the other disciplines, if we want to scale this up to other disciplines, then that idea is never going to get off the ground. I have a favorite story of, a design engineer putting a fastener in a corner of something that's inaccessible. It's in a pocket here. And I said, well, you can't do that. He says, well, the stress shows that we have to put it there. I'm like, I believe you, but it's physically not possible to install. Well, what do you mean? The fastener fits there. I'm like, there's a tool that has to put that fastener on, and I can't, it doesn't fit.
There, yeah.
Like, where does it go? So, I mean, that just show that these disciplines need to harmonize, and maybe that's a lesson for another time. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, highly analytical sort of a deal there. But I didn't join One Shepherd until, see, that was my first Warrior base, or first interaction with them was like '08, '09. So right as I was graduating. So.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of good. I want to touch on something there since we have a little bit of time.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. Like being an engineer is It's really about challenging or solving challenging problems. The best skill you can have is communication. So
Yeah.
to give you the contrary, I'm a lead software engineer, but I have a bachelor's degree in history. So I have the exact opposite upbringing. And my
Oh.
You would never think that the history degree would help at all, but it really helped me become an effective communicator, especially in the written word,
Yeah.
and helping finding innovative ideas. I am never Don't ask me to type on a computer or about programming. I can kind of do it, but I can really help get people to where they need to be,
All right.
and that's really what it's all about. So,
And I imagine
uh,
you could probably help people understand the context of like, hey, this is framed this way, and other people have done this thing in the past, and that's how that works. And because of that design decision over there,
yep,
you're negating this aspect here. Or you can communicate that almost in a
exactly.
historical framework. Yeah, I could see that.
Right.
That makes
So
sense.
that nut problem that you talked about where it didn't fit, I may have found it solved in a different way. I'd be like, hey guy, like what were the past projects like? What the past iterations look like? And what did you learn from the past ones? Okay, well we did this, that, and the other thing. Maybe we can try doing this instead.
Hmm.
So as the takeaway for me is like there's a lot of different ways to solve it, and a degree it definitely doesn't hurt, but it is not the end all be
Right.
all
Yeah.
solution for people. So you started segueing. I apologize for interrupting about you got married, you got a nice job, then you had your first one shepherd experience. I'd love to know a little bit about how you found out about it. My understanding is you live pretty close. Walk me through
Yeah.
what the first time experience was like. What did you do to prepare? How did you find it? And then like, what was that first moment where you saw Doc's beautiful chiseled jawline?
Yeah. Okay. So this was One Shepherd was structured a little bit different back then. I won't go into that, but sufficient to say that I actually ran across One Shepherd at a 3-gun competition or 2-gun, whatever it was, in mid Missouri at CMMG of all places, if you know that name.
Oh, I
Yeah,
love them. Yeah.
they had a back before they moved their factory and everything when it was run out of like basically literally a shack on their property somewhere. They had a 3-gun shootout there, and I remember it was like an A flight and a B flight if you ever do like the golf scoring. So it's just a way to, you cut it down the middle and go, the top 3 here get prizes and the top 3 here get prizes. So I was smack dab in the middle. So I was like top whatever of the B flight group. And they had a prize table that you could go through. And One Shepherd had been there. They had a booth showing all their weapons with the BFAs on it and the Miles 2000 on it. I went, oh, that's pretty cool. So I had seen them during the day going from stage to stage. Brief interaction with them. I remember talking to who I now know is Kerry Kroger. Um, and let's see, I wonder who else was there. Yeah, I know Larson was there. I think his brother Patrick was there. Anyway, we go through. At the end of the day, I get to walk through the prize table, and everyone's picking up, like barrel nut wrenches and things. And I see this thing over in the corner that says free, whatever value certificate that was probably pretty expensive, maybe a couple $100, $300 at the time. I don't remember. But everyone was getting the $50 like gun part thing. I'm going, why is nobody taking this? This is clearly worth more. And it was to go do this thing. At the time, it was called Squad Gods. So what it basically was a full day of miles-based gunfighting, shoot 'em ups. But it wasn't like paintball quick iteration, as they explained. It was like there's a morning section, however long that lasts, we'll make that last. You eat lunch, and then we'll do an afternoon session. And they let me put on my own or use my own rifle because I asked, well, can I do that? So that experience was awesome. It was done in what they called Rushville. This was over by the Fort Leavenworth, Kansas area. That's where Chris was living at the time because he was instructing at Leavenworth for cubic defense there. And I remember like getting it all sighted in. Patrick Larson was there, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." Like, but this is at like not at paintball and airsoft ranges because I'd played paintball, never played
Right.
airsoft, but I had played paintball throughout high school, and was like, and kind of put it down because it got kind of silly. It was pay to win. You get the brat 16-year-old whose daddy buys him, the $3,000
The
marker
angel or whatever.
and the
Yeah.
angel, right, the angel, and then he gives him 2 cases of paint for the day, and you're just like, well, this
Yep.
is dumb. This is just,
Can't beat it. Yeah.
yeah, there's no intelligence to how that was played. There was no like, yeah.
Hmm.
So this was really interesting because you're limited on ammo. I can count the number of mags I have with me. I'm like, that's not very much. And I remember something significant about that first day. It was Stephen Huber was actually there. He was on the opposite team, and I remember seeing them freaking out. And then I had my safety engaged, and I remember it was straight up to him, and I squeezed that trigger, and I swear I bent that trigger, but it was against the safety stop, and I didn't actually fire around. I went, oh, that was weird. Then even before that, I'll back up and say I had a shot, but like maybe these blend together, but I had the shot, but I went, this is really awkward because I'm holding a real rifle. This is my rifle. It's not somebody else's rifle. I know this shoots real bullets. And I remember having this moment of pause of like, whoa, like, so, and I didn't take the shot. I was like, that's weird. Yeah. So did that. And so I'm glad the safety thing stopped me a second time. This may have been blurred together. And then I remember calling this guy like, hey, hold this guy. I'm going to flank him. And I did flip the safety off, took a flanking shot, and remember his miles went off. I went, oh, this is so cool. This is so much better. Yeah. So to kind of make a long story short there, Dr. Larson, as you know, got in contact with him. I'm like, well, what else you got? He goes, well, we got this thing called Warrior Basic program, or Warrior Basic, that you can come to. I'm like, okay. And it was under a different structure than don't know if we called it Warrior Leader program back then, but started my first, came back later that fall, I believe, to do my first Warrior Basic. So that's how I got hooked into the program there. And it was maybe how a lot of people start is the cool, sexy, oh my gosh, I get in a gunfight. And then you do Warrior Basic and go, wait, this is deeper than just the gunfighting, because there has to be a leadership component. Like everyone realizes that like their second or third semester in, they're like, oh wait, this is more than that. So it's no different for me. So yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there. That's super cool. So I do want to also point out how much of an engineer you are. You went, when you won that prize table, you went straight to immediate value. What is the best number? And that's the cool thing about that is, from my perspective, it shows that like One Shepherd is kind of gearing it towards different people. Some people may go straight for the value. Hey, this number is bigger than that, or like the culture or something like that. But there was some core event that kind of got your foot in the door. And then I feel compelled to tell you my first One Shepherd story too.
Oh, let me hear it.
This is at Warrior Basic, the Force on Force, and I was with Coop in Ohio, John, and we've been buddies. We've known each other for 15 years.
Was this at Bravo?
We line up. This is at Bravo, yeah.
I was there,
like 2022. And we're sitting there and we're looking, we hear him coming across the bush. We're all lined up, and then all of a sudden, like I flip my safety off, I hear click, and then I hear both guys to my left and right click as well. Mm-hmm. And I said I still get goosebumps about that story. I was like at that moment, I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. I am in, like, sign me up.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We're sharing war stories here. So my first Warrior Basic 2, because everyone thinks we're like, people I think look at us because we got black guys and like, oh my gosh, these guys are so cool. They know so much. Like my first Warrior Basic, we were sent out on this land nav mission that I thought, I now know why they do it. But at the time it was like, you could just go out here, meet us up with this other group and then come back. And I was like, easy. But what I didn't know then is that they had intentionally had these other groups that had nothing to do with you pass through your area. And I remember something about the challenge and password being this little clump of trees out in the middle of this farmer's field that some people actually crawled through cow manure. That was horrible, but
on brand. Yeah.
Yeah. On brand. Yeah, exactly. And I remember this guy showing up and I was like, oh, I got to do the challenge. And Pastor, I'm like, we got a guy here. And I may have had a little incontinence because I didn't know, is he a bad guy? And so I'm trying to remember. And I think I gave him like the response to the password or something. I was just soup sandwich. And we eventually figured it out, let him come through. That was one of their land nav points to move on to somewhere else. And we eventually made it back. But yeah, you at night, people had night vision. Like there was one guy with night vision back then because this is like early, 2009 wasn't as prolific as it is now. And it was just like, oh my gosh, that was the coolest thing ever. I just did a night mission with a gun and 4 other guys. And oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, it's so cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So let's continue along with the program. So the hooks are in at this point.
Oh yeah.
If you can kind of give me like maybe an abridged version to you black hatting.
Oh yeah. Okay.
What are some key experiences there? What did you learn? How is it different than it is now? Like, talk us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So the program really has matured. When I went through it, it was shorter. The leadership course, what we now call light leaders, was really a 1-day course with land nav thrown in because we didn't have Warrior. We had Warrior Basic and really the light leaders course. And then that was kind of it. Then you had these STXs. I forgot how many there were, probably not even relevant, but you went through, and as long as you built, we still had the same path to like, okay, you have to be a rifleman first, and then you have to be a fire team leader, and then you have to be a patrol leader, APL or PL. So that was still the same. Graduated in or finished the program in 2011 thereabouts. So only 2 years from '09 to 11, somewhere around there. And around that time though too, I guess you could say maybe we now call it fast tracking, but they were basically releasing what we now know as like the staff model back then, trying to do that. And then they invited me into the instructor, the CDP, the Cadre Development Program, to learn how to be an instructor. So I actually took command of Alpha Company as a green hat because I'd gone through the staff stuff and needed to finish up. And that same year I did finish up my instructing requirements, and so became a black hat that year. So condensed a lot in there now. Yeah, I mean, I could fast forward and describe the next chunk of time, but yeah.
In terms of time, I just want to kind of like get an understanding of the timeline there. So was that basically just back to back to back alpha semesters?
Yeah, so there
was only alpha.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I got to describe. Yeah, that's all that existed really was an Alpha Company is not what we know it. It was not a whole week long program. That was thanks to a later director, Patrick Quad. Brilliant idea. He actually interned with me at the company, so that's how I got suckered him into joining. He's doing great now. He's a manager in the aerospace industry. But yeah, I forgot where we were going with that. But yeah, the semester structure looked different. So we had every spring and fall, roughly, we had a Warrior Basic weekend. So you'd show up on a Friday, set your stuff down. You'd go all day Saturday, half the day Sunday, and then go home. So that was your Warrior Basic. And then you'd come back to what we now know as the STX. It's the same thing. You'd go do the same thing. All day Friday, half day Sunday, go home. And then you'd come back for a 3-day FTX where you arrive basically early morning, like 10 o'clock on Friday, go do your whole 2-day FTX. So Friday to Sunday at noon, clean up your stuff and go home. So that was how the semesters were structured back then. There were certain challenges of that way I could go into. But yeah, that's how it was structured back then. I mean,
that's the topic for the whole thing. But that's great information for us to kind of like dissect and talk about later. But super cool. So going with this narrative, you get your black hat, you go through all the required CDP, you become a black hat.
Mm-hmm.
What then? Because your title right now is something unique. So let's talk about, I guess, where you currently are within the regiments and. Let us know. I'd love to know some of the roles and responsibilities of what that is.
Sure. Yeah. So, in order to do that, I have to paint a bit of a picture of how One Shepherd has transitioned from then to now, so it all makes sense. So we did have, a staff development program that waxed and waned. It puttered and started because it's hard to get people into the program and commit to long enough to be able to stay in those positions. That's a difficult thing. It takes X number of time to get people through the program, and then takes another additional amount of time to train them as an instructor, and another additional time, if not concurrent, to train them as staff, because it's a different function, different role and function. So that has always matured, but I think at that time we had a staff model that was really, in hindsight, and we recognize this now, was an inappropriate model for something that small, because we only had Alpha Company. And so we were operating as if we had 3 rifle companies, notional rifle companies, but we had the staff model, but it was only for one place. So it was the wrong model for that. We know that now, but nevertheless served on in a few different roles, because I had to back away from that. I had my first kid in 2012, so backed away from that role. The command of Alpha Company changed hands a few different times over the next few years. I came back, and I want to say I was helping out with like the S5 marketing, I believe, at a certain point, S6 communications at a certain point. I came back on under Patrick Quad to be his deputy when he developed the week-long semester there. So there was One Shepherd. In other words, it's telling the story that One Shepherd is maturing as an organization, as an institution. And so I remember when the next big kind of inflection point in One Shepherd's history was setting up Bravo Company. And so I was involved in Alpha Company at the time. I believe I retook the reins functionally at that point. All kind of blurs together at a certain point. Retook the reins, and I know we were getting set up to do Bravo. Chip James Kaiser Andre was instrumental in that. He was a Missouri guy. He was part of the staff that I looked up to. he went over to, I think he got a job on the East Coast, so he was eyeing a spot. He knew where we needed to be,
Uh,
and
uh,
unfortunately, we lost Chip, and that was pretty difficult. But I was, at that point, there was some amount of commitment there that I was like, well, this is an inflection point for me as well. One Shepherd has his frustrations. It's difficult as staff and cadre to put this whole enterprise on. It's 100% volunteer, and that's the way it should be. That was a really difficult time to go through because there was, we're growing. There's struggles and strains that come with that. Right. So the people involved with that, hey, it should look like this. No, it should look like that. And this is around the time when we became a 501c3. So a whole bunch of restructuring. So there's tensions there within the institution and the people that were surrounding that. But anyway, we launched Bravo Company.
I'd love to just quickly dive into that. So
yeah.
Bravo Company is near and dear to my heart. I'd love to know kind of so Bravo Company started with somebody who originated at Alpha, had a job at Bravo, and on their own initiative was like, hey guys, here's what I think we should do, and the organization kind of followed, and we're here now. Is that right?
Well, yeah, actually that vision was actually cast as early as 2010, 2011 of
Okay.
And Chris describes this, and it makes sense. You say, hey, we're Alpha. If we're going to grow, it can't just be more semesters at this location. We want to reach people because we're able to see kind of the marketing trend, as it were, of who shows up to this thing. We're not getting people from California, and we're not getting people from Pennsylvania. They're just not going to drive that long. So we have to go to where they are. And so this vision of really, it's 9 rifle companies. If you draw a line through the middle of basically St. Louis along that parallel, you got one in the middle. We need one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and then you go up to the north and you go, we need one in the middle, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and then you go down, one in the middle, one on the East Coast, West Coast, like Florida, Southern California, or this desert Southwest. So that vision was already cast. So we were aiming at that for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah. That was already on our sights. And we were told, you got to get Alpha stable. You got to get Alpha stable. Alpha has to be good. And it's like, we will never be stable, like, until we figure out the next thing. And then that magically becomes stable, right? Yep. So we had to kind of take a leap of faith. You could argue that we dragged Alpha Company to Bravo the first semester. Okay, fine. But we have to build these cultures and communities because, hint, hint, that's what it all boils down to. You're building community. You're not just building a quote unquote school that operates out of a location and you call that done. It doesn't work that way. You need a whole community around that of staff and instructors and learners around that. So that's really how Bravo got started. That vision was already cast, so we just had to get it to cross the line.
From the I guess the outsider, not necessarily the outsider perspective, but from the newbie perspective compared to you, it's super cool to see that vision planted 10 years ago and now start to see it slowly get executed and get momentum. So Bravo Company was what, 4 or 5 years ago. Charlie Company
2018,
was
something like that.
Yeah, and then Bravo Company, Charlie Company, what, 2024, and now we just have the beginnings of Delta Company in Texas. So it's super cool to see this this really pick up a lot of momentum. Now I'd like to kind of shift this over to, I guess, your current role. So you're the regimental chief of staff.
Correct.
I'd love to know a little bit about what the duties and responsibilities and what your focus is in this position.
Yeah, so me too, in a certain sense, because it is a new role for the institution. So I will say that, and hey, we're learning at all levels here, including me, with this new role. So I have a general idea of what that should be, but it's really, now that we're big enough that we have to coordinate these functions of like, hey, we truly are starting to round out and fill out our regimental staff to that original vision, right? And so how do we coordinate that? How do we have a consistent product across all the rifle companies that everyone's, yes, the cadre development program is doing that. And yes, there are some variation because every command staff is different. So I'm not going to dictate thou shalt do your location exactly like this location because no two command staffs are the same. But we want to make sure that the core, the essence of what One Shepherd is a consistent product across the entire landscape, as it were. So it's really been trying to do that. But frankly, what it has been in this case, and maybe it's a self-licking ice cream cone, is that launching the ALPUS, the Operational Warfighter Leader Program, we're kind of realizing that, hey, in doing that, we need to bring back what we used to call the battle staff seminars, which was just internal to One Shepherd. It wasn't open to the public. You had to be ready to serve in that capacity at One Shepherd. So it's really been aimed at that, and that story goes back to 2014 with a much wider aim. We've narrowed it down to what we know now, but so it really is about just maintaining, what we do consistently across all the rifle companies, and trying to get staff spooled up. And so that's, like I said, it's maybe a self-licking ice cream cone, but that's been a forcing function to really the battle staff seminars that we're going to spool up here as part of the Operational Warfighter Leader Program.
Yeah, so like, allow me to kind of just regurgitate what I'm hearing. So you kind of help manage the standard and the culture of the company. I also want to give you a little bit more credit. You do a lot more than that. You manage Discord, you manage the website.
Yeah, I'm the
you
treasurer
help with
technically.
the
Yeah, I'm the treasurer. I do all the taxes, all the boring stuff. I manage the website, all the. I'm the guy who processes your payment for when you click on the website. So that's why I need more staff, because I'm tired of doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For those listeners, if any of those things sound interesting, we need as much help as we can get, because as you can see, as we just talked about, this is a growing and evolving organization. So anything, it can help. So continuing with that, you kind of mentioned the next kind of topic of conversation, the ALPUS. So I'd love to kind of know, and God, that's so much fun to say.
It is, isn't it?
I'd love to know. It's incredible. Can you talk a little bit about the origins? You said it started in 2014. Like, let's talk about how, because at that point you were already in One Shepherd.
Yeah.
You had this idea for vision. Like, where did it start from? Where did it start from, and how did you start to achieve those goals?
Yeah. Okay. So ready to nerd out? Okay. Here we
Please.
go. So I'd have these wonderful experiences at One Shepherd, and wanted more, but obviously I don't have the time or the expense to dedicate to that. But how can I still effectively learn these things, the cognitive, what I'll describe now? I didn't know it back then, but what I'll now firmly describe as the cognitive domain of what we learn. I can't go do the psychomotor, so I turned to gaming. Honestly, I was like, well, what can we do in a gaming space to explore these ideas more and maybe get more what I'll call saturation time in those things. So honestly, unapologetically, turned to Arma 2 or 3, whatever it was at the time.
Nerd.
Yeah, which is great, because my defense is the Army does it, so I can too. So if they're using VBS, virtual battle space, to explore these ideas, and maybe for a different purpose and a different end state, different terminal learning objectives, as we would call it, well, what can I get out of that? So it's really, I was started exploring that with another instructor, another black hat instructor. He was actually my deputy for a while there, Brett Gallion. It's like, so we actually kind of off on our own, off to the side, started creating, well, what would this look like if we did, what does One Shepherd in this virtual space look like? Because we realized maybe this is a better way, at least that was my thought of, hey, how can we attract more people to this? How can we get the gamers off the couch and come do it for real? Can I have some intermediate stepping stone? Was a rough idea around there. So I had joined a milsim group. Doesn't matter which one. I remember which one, but and
I don't want to know.
You don't want to know.
I don't want to know.
You don't want to know. But that was interesting to see their attempt of it. Now they were milsim, so they were carrying on like all the dumb with the fun. Like they modeled all the dumb stuff too, and like, oh, I don't want to do that. So, but still, that was an interesting experience. Did that for a couple years and learned a lot from that. But then we actually kind of off to our side, kind of pulled some of those folks in who were it was an official structure. So we pulled in like the fire team leader, who actually went on to the Marine Corps. I think he works for EOTech now. Anyway.
Not a bad gig.
Yeah, so we pulled him and actually did a condensed like Warrior Basic, and like, what would it be to equivalently tab somebody virtually? Kind of quickly realizing the limitations thereof. It's like, I can get to the cognitive, but like, you're never going to know what it feels like to be exhausted after, a ruck march, or have that sense of like, man, I'm exhausted right now. How can I still think? In other words, you're never going to get somebody to hold W down for 4 hours as they simulate a ruck march. Nobody wants to do that. So how do you still make it fun? Because that's one of the core tenets of One Shepherd. How do you make it fun that they want to engage with this content? So this idea has been maturing, and we've narrowed the focus of what that might mean. And it really came to a head as this became more narrow, and we realized the left and right limits of this virtual space of like what you can and can't do. What we realized is that it shouldn't replace it. There was a discussion there too of like, can this augment or supplement the Warrior Leader program? Can they go do a Warrior Leader program and take this extracurricular virtual thing, and somehow that bolsters an understanding. And we realized, no, that actually is separate. That was kind of the big breakthrough, is that this has to be separate. It doesn't mean we don't value that learning. It's just, you get something different out of it, in other words. So, this is maturing over years and years and years here, but I would say the big breakthrough 2023-ish, 24, is we realized, what we can use this for, and what we were kind of describing all along, is that we were describing this all the way back to 2014 and 15, is that how do I get people to understand how to interface with how tanks impact the battle space, how close air support does interfaces with what you're trying to do here. We notionally in the Warrior Leader program will say you have things like that, and we simulate artillery, but we often write that out of the script, as it were, because frankly, that's a limitation. We don't have the expense. I can't really have an A-10 fly over One Shepherd site. In fact, they do, because they use us as a steer point as they go down to cannon range, but that's another story. But yeah, we can't have that because those things are expensive, and we don't have the mass. I can't show you what it's like to have that tyranny of distance, to be a company commander of 120 dudes, and you can't see anybody. You're only getting radio calls in, but you can do that in the virtual space. And so what we realize is that in order to keep this still under the auspice of leadership, because we're ultimately a leadership school, we're not a tactics school. A lot of people think we're the tactics guys, and I'm flattered by it. And we do a really excellent job of that. So I don't want to mean to skip over that so fast, but really what it is about how do we bridge that next level of leadership? So going from the tactical level of being a notional company commander, because really you and I know we really run it like a squad or inflated squad, and sometimes actual platoon level, but that whole concept scales within a company because all the resources and assets you have within that are the same. You're just doing it at a bigger level, and we know about span of control and how that permeates down, so you're just scaling up. Like, okay, you haven't really broached that inflection point, but now that we're talking about, well, how do we do that at the next highest level? Well, that's operational warfighting. That's introducing the battle staff, because now you as company commander, you don't have all the brain power and all the answers in your head that you just tell your guys what to do. It's beyond you now. You now need to interface with other folks, and that's the genesis of the operational warfighter leader program, is bridging that next level up. And so the Venn diagram really barely overlaps. Like, when we in fact we want people who have not gone to the Warrior Leader program to show up to this, because there is no, well, you have to go to the Warrior Leader program so you can understand that. No, please don't do that. Like, and also please don't come from the Warrior Leader program and go into the ALPUS and say, well, tactically, this is a tactical decision. You're not making tactical decisions anymore. It's irrelevant. Well, my piece needs a flank. You ain't the one doing the flanking, man. That's your company commander and his platoon and then his subsequent squad or fire team. You ain't in control of that.
That's really funny, because that kind of almost ties into that story you mentioned before about, bending that trigger bag. That example you just gave is metaphorically bending that trigger bag. It's like, I want to flank. I was like, well, you can't, because it's not your responsibility.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to steal that.
So yeah, I'm glad you pointed that one.
Don't bend the trigger back. Yeah, I'm writing that down. Yeah.
And like, you can kind of see how we're basically just kind of the ALPUS is flexing a different brain muscle here. It's less tactical communication is one thing, tactical and arm signals is another, but being able to I don't want to say negotiate, but build rapport with people you're working with, help understand the strategic mission and move towards it, is a whole nother set of skills. And I'd almost argue, I'm not too sure your role at work, but as a manager, like, negotiation is half of what I do. And those social skills, those cues, working together, getting direction, getting momentum, I guarantee you those skills, the ALPUS, will be directly applicable to most people in the corporate world.
And you got it.
Super exciting.
In order for us to be successful, it can't just be about, okay, you graduated the program and you're good at the exact model of what we do, the tactics and the leadership involved with that specific genre. The joke is we could have done with this with the call center, and that's absolutely true, but we don't, because it's boring. So we want people to take the skills inside of the Warrior Leader program, apply them to their day job. Like, we've had literal guys come through, and then they are, bus boys or whatever, and then within 3 months, they're now a manager because they've figured out, oh, hold on, you guys are doing this. So let me give you a commander's intent here of how we're going to run this tonight's big dinner rush. And then they're like, wait, that worked. How did you know that? How did you? Come here, you're now a manager, So we want people to take that same thing, and that's why this is aimed at a slightly more mature audience. Our minimum age is 21, because it's really about that. I don't want to call it middle management. Maybe that word doesn't apply here, but it's about seeing the different disciplines that might exist within your day job or your role and function as a person here. even my wife, she was like, I kind of want to take the operational warfighter leader program. She's a stay-at-home mom, but she interfaces with these different organizations. Like, hold on, I do some volunteering over there, and they're missing this part of how they run that organization. I think I can help them, or whatever it is that she might be involved with. So it's got to be applicable to. So there's lessons here that you can tangibly take away and go apply to your life.
Absolutely. And that minimum age thing is also probably more relevant because for a lot of these lessons to be learnable, you have to have some life experience. Like a 16-year-old learning about like middle management skills and social deconflicting, they just don't have the concept yet.
Yeah.
But 21-year-olds will absolutely have that a similar experience that everyone kind of relate to. So super cool to see that concept go from hey, how can we do this in our off time virtually and remote to, hey, nope, here's the standard, here's the execution, and here's how we're going to get there. That's very, very exciting for me. So I think with that, Matt, we've kind of answered all the questions we have. I've got. I would love to just checking the time. Yeah, we're over by about 5 minutes, which is great for me. I guess I'd love to kind of just see if you have any kind of closing statements. We did talk a lot about like your upbringing, your skill set, your career, how it kind of meshed with One Shepherd, your engineering background, and then how using your soft skills of and learning of One Shepherd start a new program. The ALPUS. I'd love to just see if you have any kind of closing start. Maybe in 5 years, review this video. I guess what would you tell yourself in 5 years?
Probably.
Is that too deep of a question?
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I think this has been. I've heard this phrase, what I'm about to say, many times before, but it's one of those things you don't appreciate that until you're at the next level. Like, to put it in academic terms, I didn't appreciate algebra until I had to do like pre-calculus. I didn't appreciate pre-calculus until I had to do calculus. I didn't appreciate that until I had to do differential equations. So they build upon each other. But when we really mean there's a 70% solution, like we don't have to have all the answers. That is okay. We're learning at every level of this institution, including me. So in fact, Lars and I were just talking about this the other night. We are going through the ALPUS at the same time you are. We're instructing it, but we're going through it just like you. So we're putting on our learner gear. We're not putting on the instructor and I'm the master of this. Dude, we haven't even taught it yet. Like, we have an idea of what this is going to be. So it's okay to go in this with a 70% solution. That's true for ourselves as well. And that will work itself out and refine itself over the next X number of years. And then it's on to the next thing. How do we grow this vision out to be the whole 9 rifle company? And now plus this virtual element that was off to the side, how do we do that? We roll out a new curriculum roughly. We just realized that the other night, roughly every 15 years or so, the Warrior Leader program happened kind of in the mid 90s, got codified and refined, and now we're launching the Operational Warfighter Leader program. So we're going to have something beyond that probably as well.
That's super exciting. The thing I'd love to add on to what you just said is you're absolutely right. The cadre and staff are learning as we go too, and that for me, that's what's super fulfilling is even as staff teaching the same class every time, the students make it a little bit different, the culture makes it a little bit different, the area makes it a little different, and every time, each time I find myself learning just a little bit more, and that's what's super fulfilling for me. So thank you very much for your time, Matt. I appreciate it. Hopefully we can do more of these kind of fireside chats or whatever you want to call it. Maybe think of a cool name. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully the viewers of this video at least learn something. So thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And I'm going to stop the recording now. So
see you in my sights.
Oh, geez.